Hi guys, welcome to Brave. I'm Claire for those of you who I haven't met before. Welcome to 30-minute Brave stretch. So what to expect from this class is a deep stretch. So if you've done a run or something physical before this, that's ideal. Or if you just want to take a little bit more of a restful day, this is a great class for you. A few things that might be helpful for you in your classes are a couple of yoga blocks. This is just to make some poses a bit more accessible for you. And also I have some a yoga padding here for my knees in some poses. Some people may prefer to have their knees more padded up, or a blanket is really nice for some of these longer holds that we're doing if it's a little bit chilly at home, because we're not going to be moving and building that heart rate. Also a bolster, which I know a lot of people don't have, but if you don't have a bolster, having a little collection of pillows and lots of different things that can help prop you up is really good. If you can even get the part of your couch where you sit on, you could even use that instead of a bolster for some of these options. So we'll start today in child's pose, toes touching at the back, knees nice and wide, and then gently let yourself sink down. And just taking a few moments to allow ourselves to arrive in the practice. And what I mean by that is get really grounded in that present moment, in the now. A great tool for this, if your mind is really racing, is to concentrate on the breath. We'll take a big breath in and a big breath out. One more big inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 4. And then allowing yourself to follow that tempo, or maybe slow it down. Keeping that nice relaxed breath throughout the class will help you really relax into these poses. Our first pose of the day is melted heart. So if you gently push into your hands and raise your head up and move your knees back a little, and then stretch your hands forward until your heart melts down into the floor. Now this might be a little bit extreme for people who are not used to doing yoga. So there's a few options. You can place your forehead on the floor, which will make the back bend not as deep. You can also place blocks under the chest or a bolster or pillows under the chest. This will make the stretch not so deep. So just having a play with whatever option is best for you. I'll take the first option for me. If you're finding this quite comfortable and you need a little bit more when you're melted down, you come onto the tips of the fingers and make it more active. This will also intensify the stretch through your shoulders. If you need some padding under the knees, that's also an option to make it feel more comfortable. You can also turn your head to one side, so rest one cheek on the floor. But just remember to change sides so that you're nice and even. We're here for 2 more breaths. Gently push into the fingers or the palms of the hands to gently rise up and slide back over the thighs, slowly walking the hands so you're stacking the vertebra. Coming into toe stretch. If you do have some extra padding and you do have sensitive knees, I like to look after my knees, so I've placed my yoga mat there. And prop your knees on your yoga mat just around the same distance as your hips and come up onto your toes and sit back. So sometimes you need to release your little toe if it gets stuck under. Now for some people this is going to feel fine and you're not going to feel much. For some people this will feel very painful, and it depends on how much you stretch your feet. So if you are doing a lot of physical exercise like weights and running, this might be quite actually painful. So you might want to move your hands onto the floor to take some of the weight from your body into your hands. This pose grows over time. So when you first come into it, it doesn't feel like much. But as you stay here, it starts to get more intense. So what you can do is, when you're not feeling much, just bring your hands back and sit back onto the feet, and you start to feel this pose really start to work. So in Chinese medicine or in yin yoga, they believe that the meridians start or end in the feet. And the meridians are basically, you can imagine them like energy channels or nerves in the body. And so the feet are really important when we're starting these stretching poses to begin in the feet so that we can really allow ourselves to relax. As this feels more intense, you might feel a little bit, another name for this pose is called broken toe pose, because sometimes it feels like your toes are a little broken, but it's actually stretching all the backs of the feet. So it's really good for you. And if it's painful, probably something you should try and do a little bit more often. And again, bring your hands down is going to make this less intense. Stay for a couple more breaths. To come out of the pose, walk the hands forward and straighten the feet. It's going to feel a little bit intense after that, and place the tops of the feet onto the floor. And you're going to maybe pump the toes on the floor a little bit, give them a wiggle. Might feel a little bit better. And then gently sit down on your heels, bring your knees together, and take a moment just to breathe with a nice straight spine. Take a little, we call these a counter stretch because the spine is nice and straight. Between every pose, we'll take one of these. Taking away any of your padding, coming into butterfly pose. So bring the feet together and knees apart. If you do have sensitive knees, there are some options such as blocks on either sides of your knees so they don't go outside the range of motion, okay? The closer your feet are to your body, the harder it is. The further away they are, the easier it is. We're going to place the hands around our feet and open our feet like a little book. So we're opening the balls of the feet towards the roof. Place the hands on the inside of your knees, up on your thighs, or if you can reach the bottoms of your legs, your calves, place them there. Inhale to lengthen and exhale to fold. So it doesn't matter if most people will not be getting their head on their feet. That's not really the goal. It is to get long and straight through the chest and fold forward from the hips. So we're not actually rounding through the back like some people think in this pose. So I'll show you. We're actually using the feet to pull the chest nice and long and then fold forward. So the back is staying reasonably straight. So this is so we get into the hips. And as you get to the full range of your motion, then you can gently let your head fold forward. You get a little bit more rounding through the back at that point. But what you don't want to do is round from up here because you're not going to get into your hips at all. So it's more of a hip stretch than a back stretch. And we'll stay for a few breaths. If you want to make this pose more intense, the feet come closer and you inhale to lengthen and exhale to fold. Use your breath to help you here. Push your elbows into your legs to allow you to get traction to really get long through the spine. Seeing if you can create space between the jaw and release. One last breath here. And then gently start to walk the hands up. And we'll straighten the legs out in front of us, but keep a straight spine for a moment. So place your hands on your thighs or behind your back and make sure your spine's nice and straight. Counter stretch, which is just keeping the back straight. Before we go into a flexion, which is a forward fold again, caterpillar pose or a double forward fold, depends on what type of yoga you're doing. So you have a couple of options. If you have a bolster, what's really nice is putting a bolster between your legs and folding over the bolster. This is one of my least favorite because my hamstrings are tight, but it's also really, really great to hold for a long period of time. If you don't have a bolster, then I'll show you the options because most people won't have one, so I'll do it with you this way. So we're going to inhale, reach through chest, same as our butterfly, and exhale to fold. Again, that hip is actually what's flexing. So the spine is relatively straight with a small flexion, but you want to imagine the hips and the spine are like a pot plant, and then that's your hips, and the actual plant is like your back. And when you twist the pot plant, the back goes with it, and it's exactly the same in yoga or in any forward fold. You don't want to be rounding through the spine up here. You're not going to get into your hips, and you're not going to get that same level of forward fold. So finding your full expression and staying there. You can use your breath to help you to inhale to lengthen and exhale, fold. See if you can get a few more extra millimeters. Placing some blocks under your knees might be a nice option as well if you're very tight through those hamstrings. But as you are in this pose, and as you breathe deeply, and as you let go of all those muscles that are holding on, you may find this gets a little easier. We'll stay for 2 more breaths. Gently walking your hands up and laying down onto your back slowly. So we're really just gently allowing each vertebra to go along the floor with control and down to a flat back. We'll take 2 breaths here as we allow that heart rate to drop and our spine to lengthen. Rolling onto your left side, placing your left hand underneath you and stacking your hips. So you want to make sure that your hips are not going back or forward. They're nice and stacked. Knees are stacked. Place your right hand on your hip. And then from here, your top leg, your right leg, goes a little bit out in front of you. And then reach behind you to grab your right foot. We're coming into a very subtle back bend here, but also a quad opener. So the more that you pull back, you don't want to pull back too much into a back bend. You want to make sure you're feeling that quad open as well. So the knee is staying in line with the hip rather than going back too far behind you. There's a couple of options to make this a little stronger. This is called cat pulling its tail. You can release that hand and pop it under your head here if that feels better. Or your other option is to straighten that top leg so it's in line with your hip, and maybe you can bind the foot. So you're actually coming into a back bend and a nice flexion, stretch to the back of the leg on the right side as well. So you'll feel hamstrings on that right side, you'll feel quad on the left, and a little bit of a back bend. Take a couple of breaths. Maybe close the eyes. And if you've taken the first version, maybe when it starts to feel really comfortable, you can start to play with straightening that top leg. And 2 more breaths. And bending that front knee, slowly bringing it back to knees stacked, and releasing your back leg, rolling onto your back, straightening your legs in front, behind you, in front of you, coming to a straight spine. We can push that lower back into the floor and try to keep it down. This is going to allow you to get that back nice and straight, rather than coming into a deep back bend where you could put your hand right under your back. See if we can push the lower back into the floor to encourage straightening and realignment. Let's do the other side. So the right side, we're rolling onto the right. Use your bottom arm as a pillow. The same thing, we're going to reach across with the top hand and grab the bottom foot. So you'll start to feel, the more your knee comes in line with your hip, the more of a quad stretch you'll feel. The more you pull it up towards your glutes, the stronger it will feel as well. You can have a play with straightening that top leg in front of you. And if you feel like you want a little bit more, got a couple of options, such as using that right hand to bind on the outside of the left foot and coming into that cat pulling its tail, the full expression. Getting into the quad and also the hamstring on the opposite leg. Letting the head and neck relax. Using that slow and steady breath. And telling the body to release. And taking 2 more breaths. To come out of the pose, releasing that top leg if you had the bind and releasing the bottom leg. Bring your knees together and roll onto your belly. Maybe making your hands on top of each other and resting your forehead on your hands. Making sure that back is nice and long. And taking a few breaths here while we realign. When you're feeling ready, gently place your hands onto the floor, come into an upward facing dog, roll the shoulders back. You don't have to be too active in this dog because this class is a really yin-based class, which is a releasing class, so you can just let yourself be soft. Bend the knees, come up onto your knees, frog pose, fun times. I normally hold this frog pose for a minimum of 3 minutes. We're going to only take for a couple of breaths today, but this is a great one to do for a longer hold. So with this one, you have your toes pointed out to the sides, you have your knees and your ankles in one line. So I'll do it from this way so you can see me as well. I've rolled my mat up 3 times to pad up my knees. Please pad up your knees in this pose because it can be quite intense for the knees. So ankles and knees are in one line, toes out to the sides, and we want to push back because if you go forward, you're not going to get the stretch. So you push back into the heels, then you can self-assist yourself by just placing your hand on the inside of the quad of the knee and encouraging the knee out to the side. And once you have this pose, I'll just change sides so I can talk to you a little better. Once you have this pose, you can start to bring your hands down, maybe onto blocks, or if you do have a bolster, a really awesome way is to place that bolster right under the chest and the belly and fold forward over that. Maybe one cheek to one side. If you're not feeling much in the hips, you just self-assist yourself on the inside of your thighs and get them out a little wider. Flex the toes, really important to protect the knee. And again, pushing those hips back so your hips are in between your knees is going to make this a lot more of a stretch for you. If you just flop forward onto your chest, you won't feel it. You'll look like you're really flexible, but you're actually just cheating. So stay in the stretch. We'll stay for 3 breaths. You can move your knees out a little wider if you're not feeling it. If this is your edge, then stay here. To come out of the pose, gently bring your heels together. Remove the blocks or that bolster and then slide your belly onto the floor. Get nice and straight and then maybe windscreen wipe the legs from side to side. Inhale to an upward facing dog, roll shoulders back. And exhale, downward facing dog. Pushing through those heels and taking that mat back to normal. So with your down dog, if you push through the heels, they don't have to be straight onto the floor. Your knees might be a little bit bent to start in your down dog. So don't be too judgy on yourself. If you want to pedal out the legs, straightening one and then the other, this is often a really nice way if you're tight in the hamstrings to let one side release more. Look between your hands, knees between your hands, coming into saddle pose. Saddle pose is best with a bolster, especially when you're starting out. If you're super bendy, I'll give you some options as well. So it's really nice to have pillows behind you. If you have a bolster, that's awesome. Knees together, feet out to the side, and then sit down, move your calves out of the way and sit down in the space between your legs. So knees are together, feet out to the side so I can see the tops of my feet. I move my calves out of the way and sit down in that space. If this already feels really intense for your knees can be a little wider, so hip width apart, but preferable that they're together if you can. Now, place your hands on the top of your feet and then walk your hands back and eventually relaxing back over the bolster, or if you have a pile of blocks, you can also use blocks on the edge, which is a little bit more intense. If you are very bendy, you may be able to do this without the help of blocks and a bolster, but only if you're very flexible. So you might be able to come back and rest on your elbows and let your head fall back as option 1, or option 2 is straighten the arms. And then bring the hands over the head. So we'll be here for a couple of breaths. So if you are taking the full expression, which is this one, it is quite intense. If it's too much, you can do a half hero, which is when you come up, you can straighten one leg and just do half. So just do one leg at a time for a couple of breaths. Choose your option. If I'm doing the half version, I come up and I'm going to swap sides. So I'm going to straighten my right leg and I'm going to bring my left leg in and come down for the last couple of breaths. So lots of options for you depending on the equipment that you have. The most restorative version is the first one with the bolster. Taking your last breath wherever you are. If you're in the reclined version without assistance, you can place your elbows on the floor, bend your elbows, come up to prop yourself up, and then push yourself up with your hands. And we'll come into a seated position, hands just resting on your thighs, and push in a back traction. So put your hands into your hips and push into the hips to straighten through the spine. Hands onto the floor, step back, downward facing dog, pedaling out the knees. Down dog twist. So you might need to bring your hands a little closer for this one and then twist over. The right hand grabs the outside of the right ankle as we look under that left arm. So this is twisting the spine. So we've done a lot of forward folds and some back bends as well. And the best way to realign the back is to twist. You should always wait more towards the end to do these ones. Bring that right hand to the top, and then the left hand comes under and grabs the right ankle, and look over underneath that right armpit. And the more you try to bring that chest under, the deeper the twist will be. And we'll take a couple more breaths here. Hands onto the floor, bring the knees down, and then pop your hands between your feet between your hands would be better. Open up the chest and slowly roll down onto the floor. So banana asana, which is one of my favorite poses. We're going to move our hips over towards the right, and we're going to move the left leg over towards the left, and then we're going to hook the right foot over the top. Try to keep both hips onto the floor, so you shouldn't be twisting up to one side. And then the same deal, we're going to have the left hand slightly over to the left. We're going to bind onto the wrist. So you're bound, so the right hand's grabbing the wrist of the left hand, reach up and lengthen first, and then over to the side. So what your goal is to have this really lovely stretch through the side body. To make this a little bit more intense, you can actually get the left hand and grab the right wrist and use that to gently pull. You want to keep both of your hips on the floor so you're not twisting over to one side. To make it deeper with the feet, you just move, shimmy that left foot more towards the left. The right foot's over the top, and that'll deepen the side stretch. Releasing the hands, releasing the feet. Place the feet flat on the floor and put that lower back onto the floor and keep the knees bent. Push the lower back down rather than allowing the back to dip. We just realign for a moment. Moving your hips over towards the left. And let's first go nice straight and lengthen through the body. And then we're going to move the right leg a little bit over more towards the right, and the left foot comes over the top of the right leg. And then we're going to get the right hand, grab the left wrist, and encourage it over towards the right. So we're getting this stretch through the left side of the body. The more that you gently pull that left hand over, the more of a side stretch you get. The more you move your legs over towards the right, the more of a side stretch you'll get through the bottom torso as well. If the hips start to twist, you know you've gone too far, so just come out of it a little. And just relax and breathe. This should feel really nice. It shouldn't feel painful. If it does feel painful, then just come out a little. To come out, you can gently bring yourself back to center and straighten the legs out in front of you for a moment. And nice and long through the torso. And exhale, bring the right knee in towards the body and pull it up nice and tight. When we pull up that knee nice and tight and interlace the fingers around the shin, we're actually pushing that lower back into the floor, which is really good to, again, realign after twists and stretches. Supine twist, the right knee comes over the top of the body and just gazing towards the roof. There's no need to look to the side. You can make this a little more intense if you wish by grabbing the outside of that right foot and straightening that top leg. Similar to cat pulling its tail, except that bottom leg is straight. So it's a more gentle twist. See if we can release a few muscles that you're not really needing. See if there's anything else that can soften. And what is your jaw doing? Are you clenching through the teeth? Can you soften in the jaw? Bend that top knee and slowly bring it in towards the body, straightening it out in front of you. Take a breath in to prepare and exhale, left knee into chest, interlacing fingers around shin and pulling knee nice and tight in towards the body. And exhale, bringing the knee over the top of the body. Option to straighten that top leg and come into a bind on the outside of that left foot. Keeping both shoulders on the floor. Trying not to twist. If one shoulder starts to rise, it probably means that you can just come out of how deep your twist is. Take it easy. And let your body be soft. Allow gravity to let the body sink the weight towards the ground, to melt a little further. Bend that top knee and slowly come back to center. Taking a happy baby, so grabbing the outsides of the feet and pulling in the knees towards your armpits. But instead of rounding through the spine, I'd like you to push that lower back into the floor so you're nice and sturdy. I want you to pull your feet closer in towards yourself and push your feet away. So this is actually actively pushing our spine into the ground and also opening the hips. The knees are coming in nice and tight towards your armpits. And then let yourself be softer. So stop pulling and just let your arms passively hold your feet. And maybe now that you can have a little rock from side to side. Gives that lower back a bit of a massage. Bring your feet together and then knees together. Then walk your feet gently back down to the floor. You have a few options here. You can stay in a Shavasana for a few minutes, but if you have to leave the class right on time at 30 minutes, you can come out with us. Bring the knees into the chest and roll onto your favorite side, using your bottom arm as a pillow. Using your hand to gently help yourself up to a comfortable seated position. Bring your hands to your hearts. Namaste, which means the light within me honors the light within you. And I hope you enjoyed the class. I do recommend a little Shavasana at the end if you can fit it in. And have a lovely day. I hope you enjoyed our 30-minute stretch class to stretch you out after some physical activity and get it done nice and quick. Have a good day.